All right, everyone. We've got an hour and a bit left and tons to run through. So, I just want to finish off. I want to finish off this point because I think it's really important. Questions. How important questions are going to be. Understanding, being fluent of the questions of your customer base. And what that involves is just keeping a radar on every single question you get asked, questions that get submitted online. Making your sales teams, if you have sales teams, keep a list of questions. I came across this guy in the States recently who has a very successful mortgage broking company. And he had put a video out there and he was telling the story about the fact that when he started this mortgage broking company, he wasn't doing very well. He wasn't able to stand out from the crowd. It was kind of just fizzling into a nothing. And he, as a last-ditch attempt, he had been writing down all the questions people had asked him in an effort to try and educate himself on, what people wanted to know. And he had 100 questions. And he went to his marketing department and he said, we're out of options here. I've got nothing, but I do have these 100 questions. Is there something that we can do with that? And his marketing person said, yeah, actually, how about we do 100 questions in 100 days? How about we do that? And we do one, as a video, one as a blog. Some of these questions aren't even about your expertise. How about we bring in some other people in our network that can answer some of these questions? And we just do a campaign, 100 questions in 100 days, and we just see what happens. And it went off. It went viral. 100 questions in 100 days. Because guess what happens? If you answer my question, if you contribute by answering my question, I'm going to read it, right? And then what else am I going to do with it? Share it, because you better bet that there are people that I know in my network who are similar to me that have the same questions as me. And if it is useful, going back to the keep it or share it rule, if it is useful, I will share it. And then suddenly you get what's called the halo effect, which is where I share you within my network. Everybody has a halo. And in that halo are all the people that trust you. And if I share somebody within my network, they get to take advantage of my halo effect. Because people go, well, if Jules likes him, he must be good. Because she likes good people. And so suddenly you have associated trust, which is all the halo effect is. And so by contributing, you're not only engaging with the people that you want to talk to, you are engaging with their network as well. And that's when it becomes exponential. Because you've got a natural ceiling if you're only ever going to talk to the people that you know. You want to get it out wider. So I want you to pay attention to questions. I want you to start a note on your phone, just called questions, and keep a discipline to write it down. I also have something in my calendar that I've had for many years on a Monday morning. It's actually a Tuesday morning now. I just moved it. It's an hour, and it's just called Radar. That's all it's called. And in that Radar hour, I sit down, I take time out of whatever is going on, and I go to a coffee shop, I buy myself a coffee, and I just widen my radar. I step into the role of translator, and I go to all the places where I know interesting things live. I go to the blogs, I read the trends reports, I go down little rabbit holes based on the questions that I've been asked. I pull out useful information, and I then either create content out of it or I share it. And I don't mean share it to everybody, I mean specifically I share it with people that I'm looking to connect with more or people that I love. I might say, hey, the most powerful words in influence. I saw this and I thought of you. I saw this and I thought of you. Now, that is the number one thing that you can say that's going to grab somebody's attention because it's agendaless, it's contribution-based. It means I've been thinking about you outside of our interactions and all I want to do is help. Saw this and I thought of you. And guess what? You know when you lose business and someone says no to you or no to your project or no to your ideas, what we tend to do when someone says no to us is what do we do? You just kind of, go back into our box and kind of go, I'm so sorry, I'll go away now. Do you know, I was talking to somebody recently and he said that's ridiculous. And he'd just written a book called The Art of Soulful Persuasion, amazing guy. And he said that's ridiculous. You have put so much effort into trying to win that business. You've done all the hard work already. You know them inside out. You know everything. You put all this effort into what could be a solution for them, and what you let go now you've done all the hard work, that's your time to stand out. That's your time to contribute, because if you will contribute to my world when I've said no to you, I'm gonna be impressed, aren't I? You keep contributing even when I've said no to you. And you keep contributing, and you keep saying, I saw this and I thought of you. I had this idea, I thought it might be useful for you. I know you're struggling with this, I found this. Now when the time comes around again for them to make another decision, you're going to be front of that queue. So questions and radar, keeping a radar, paying attention to questions. An objection is just a question left unanswered, probably one of the truest. If what you do is great, and you are great at what you do, then if someone says no, it's usually because there was a question in there somewhere that didn't get answered. And so again, paying attention to the questions. Very quickly on this, Gwyneth Paltrow, Goop, big fan. She's very polarizing, I know. But this is interesting. And again, regardless of how you feel about any of these companies and whether they relate to your world, take the piece that you can do something with. This is interesting. Companies are starting to use questions in product and journey design. If you understand the questions of your target market in their exact language, you can use it within product and journey design. Now, I think that this is one of the industries that is the ripest for disruption right now. If I was going to start another company, which I'm not, but if I were, this is the company that I would start. So I'm tired. I have 2 babies under 3. I'm pretty tired, and I know I need some better vitamins because I've been eating on the run. I go to a pharmacy, and what do I see when I get to the pharmacy? Walls and walls. And they're all called scientific names. CoCreation. What on earth is that? Krill oil, refined krill oil. B12, B10, B2. I have no idea what any of that is. How is that even a product name? If I were going to start a vitamins company, this is how I would do it. I would call it Zombie Mum. Or Why Am I So Effing Tired? But Gwyneth Paltrow's already done that one. Using questions for product design is something you're going to see over and over and over again. And journey design. So let's keep moving. What's next? What's next is captivation. If the eyes and the ears of your target market belong to the translators, and they do, if they're the ones that are getting attention, then the hearts of your target market belong to the storytellers. They're the ones that are going to keep their attention. And why is that? It's because we are hardwired for story, right? We're utterly hardwired for it. Story is how we communicate. Story is how we share. It's how we engage. It's how we trust. Back in tribal days, 2 tribes would come together that didn't even speak the same language, and they would share stories with each other. Because the act of telling a story has an energy above and beyond language. It's just connective. And so if story is the only road to empathy, if I can only come to know what it is to walk in your shoes, if you tell me, if it's the only road to empathy, empathy is usually one of the only roads to emotion. I can only feel something about you and your brand if I understand a little bit about your world. So empathy leads to emotion, and emotion leads to action. We only take action when driven by emotion the majority of the time. We think we're very logical creatures. It's no surprise we're not. We're emotive creatures. We usually respond to storytelling above and beyond anything else. And if you don't believe me, then just look at whatever you engaged with on your newsfeed this morning. It would have been story-based. Probably human story-based. So we're storytelling creatures. If you're going to stand out, if you're going to design for influence, you're going to need to nail the art of epic storytelling. Who knows this guy? Anyone recognize this guy? Ali Gore. So those of you who don't know who Al Gore is ex-presidential candidate. I'll tell you the story in the shortest possible way. So ex-presidential candidate, lost, got sad, grew a beard, got on a boat, went around the world. It's just like a very long story made short. So got sad, got on a boat, and he went around the world. And while he was around the world, he started seeing some things that really concerned him. He started seeing species that were dying. He started seeing communities that were struggling. He came across miles and miles and miles and miles of plastic, impenetrable plastic in the ocean. And he got really concerned, and he turned his boat around and he went back home. And he shaved off his beard, and he put this together, An Inconvenient Truth. Has anyone seen it? No? An Inconvenient Truth is basically one epic story about climate change and the impact of climate change and the impact of pollution.
And he also was vice president.
Vice president, thank you, yes. He was also he's a very impressive man. And so he put together An Inconvenient Truth. Now, An Inconvenient Truth is a 1-hour epic story about the impact of climate change and pollution. every single place an inconvenient truth was shown, 50% of people offset their carbon for the year. 50% of people took direct financial action as a result of one epic story. Now, you know, if you could get 50% of people to take direct financial action as a result of just hearing one of your stories, that's pretty impressive, right? That would be worth doing. Now, bear in mind that up until that, the scientific community had been spending a decade trying to get our attention, using stats and bar graphs and, you know, very valid, very important scientific information, but had got nowhere at all. One epic story and 50% of people start getting into action. So there's two ways you can take that story. The first way is you can go, you know what, he's a presidential candidate, he's a vice president, he's probably a very compelling communicator, he probably has access to a lot of money and a lot of resources, he's probably got tons of production that he can tap into, he's probably an extrovert, let me think of a bunch of other reasons why I'm not him, and I could never do that. So that's one way to take the story. Another way to take the story is to just get really forensic about it and go, why? What was it about that story that resonated above and beyond anything else, above and beyond the facts and the expertise? And I'll put it to you, because I'm just a freaky geek and I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. I'll put it to you that I believe it's because he took the story and he made it our story. Took the story and he made it our story. He talked about the animals that we cared about, what was going to be happening to them. He talked about the air that our children are going to be breathing 5 years from now and how that's going to feel in their bodies. He talked about the communities that we care about and what's going to happen to them and their families. He took the story and he made it our story, and because of that, we took action. And that is the key to epic storytelling. All too often we tell our version of events, our stories. You need to take your stories and make it your customers' stories. So I'm going to give you a quick exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to talk to the person next to you or as a table, however you want to do it, about what epic stories could you be telling? Customer stories, client stories, product stories, how-to stories. What epic stories do you have access to? And how could you be telling them better? So off you go. I'll give you, if you could pump up some music, I'll give you a couple of minutes to give that a go. What I want you to do next is I want you to get 3 Post-it notes and put it in front of you. So are you listening? 3 Post-it notes. 3 Post-it notes, put it in front of you. On the first Post-it note, I want you to write 2 or 3 epic stories from the ideas you just talked about that you could be telling that you're not right now. On the second Post-it note, I want you to write 2 or 3 places you could be telling them. Where are the eyes and ears of your target market right now? Where are they? You know, we talked at the beginning about whether you should be everywhere or whether you should double down. My belief is that you should double down. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I think things sometimes get reposted to Facebook, but my Facebook feed is atrocious. I'm on LinkedIn because I have a B2B model, and that's where the eyes and the ears of my target market live. I'm also on Instagram because I have a podcast, and that's when the eyes and the ears of that target market live. So, first one, what 2 or 3 epic stories you want to choose, you want to start telling. Second one, what 2 or 3 places do you know the eyes and ears of your customers live? Third one, how could you tell those stories to the best effect? Is it video? Is it a blog? Is it a podcast? Is it short 1-minute bites? Is it longer 5-minute videos? What formats? Do you believe, and again, it's going to be version 8, so let go of perfect. Do you believe at gut level is going to get the most attention from your target market? So 3 Post-it notes, which stories, where, and how. Did anyone here struggle with that a little bit? Yeah. So here's a bit of a clue for you. If you're not sure, ask. If you're not sure, ask. And I don't mean me, because you know I don't know everything about your target market. Ask your target market. And do a luncheon for your clients. Just say, look, I'm putting together a board of clients. Would you be part of it? You're one of our most respected customers. Would you mind? I'm going to shout you lunch. Would you mind if I picked your brains for an hour? Ask. Where do you go to for the majority of your information? Do you read our emails? When we send you information, should it be written format? Should it be video? How long should it be? What kind of stories are you interested in? What kind of questions are you hoping that our communications will answer? Just ask. Again, they're the experts. Let them tell you. And once you have that information, then execute on it. Don't not do video, even though your customers have said that they want video just because you don't like video. Facebook Lives. I mean, I'll share with you a challenge of mine at the moment. Apparently, I should be doing Facebook Lives. All the data that comes back tells me so. All the feedback that I get tells me so. All the anecdotal stuff says so. And have I done a single Facebook Live? Nope. Do I want to do it? Nope. So, there's one for me this year. It's only me that's getting in the way of that. I could do a live podcast interview. It doesn't even have to just be about me. And I still haven't done it. So what are you getting in the way of, even when you've got data that tells you the opposite? Now, for anyone who's sat there thinking, well, if I'm going to do it, it has to be perfect. It just has to be perfect. I'm not going to put it out there unless it's perfect, unless it looks amazing, unless I have this much money to spend on it. It's not worth doing. And if I could totally relate to that. I used to, in the office, the girls used to call me left pixel girl, because everything had to be just totally beautiful. And I could literally spot a pixel out of place, and I'd send it right back. They'd be like, literally the designer can't even find what you're talking about. If you look in the left-hand corner, there's a pixel. It's just wrong color. So I am a nightmare for being a bottleneck for stuff happening, an absolute nightmare. I want to share this with you for any of the other recovering perfectionists in the room, or not recovering, if you're me. I want to talk to you about this. So for one of the people I interviewed for the podcast a while ago, and I brought him back recently to re-interview him because I think that his work is very important. It's a guy called Ben Jones. Ben heads up a team called Unskippable Labs. Unskippable Labs are within Google. Now, Google owns YouTube. 5 billion hours of video gets watched on YouTube every single day. And what Google figured out, is that they knew absolutely nothing about why or what was getting watched. And they were trying to sell advertising, and they had this skip, the skip button that you can skip after 5 seconds. So they had this skip button, and everybody was skipping. And they're trying to sell advertising, and everyone's skipping the adverts, and no one's winning. And they were just trying to figure out what on earth was going on with storytelling, and they realized they didn't have a clue. And so they started this team, and they called them Unskippable Labs. Basically, what makes a story so compelling it is unskippable? And they sent Ben off with a credit card, and it was his job to figure this stuff out. And they did a number of experiments. If you Google Unskippable Labs, they are great storytellers, unsurprisingly. And so there are 3-minute videos that come up on each of their experiments. It's well worth watching them. And one of the ones that they did is they went to L'Oreal, and they said, L'Oreal, you're having trouble with cut-through right now. And L'Oreal were like, hands up, yes, we are. Everything that we used to do isn't working anymore, and we could do with some help. And they said, well, you're trying to figure it out, we're trying to figure it out, let's join forces. And so they made 3 ads for L'Oreal. One was called The Glam, and it was high production, using a celebrity, lots of money spent on it, lights, makeup, cameras, action, the whole thing. Second one was called The Show. Not as much money spent on it, still a wee bit of production, and using an influencer. So not a celebrity, but still someone that has profile. And the final one was The Tell. And The Tell was literally their work experience girl in the stationery cupboard with an iPhone, walking through the product. Now, which do you think got the most cut through? The Tell. Actually, The Glam and The Tell got similar cut through, but the one that had by a country mile the most recall was The Tell, specifically in younger generations. So if perfection is getting in your way because you don't think that you can get cut through unless it's perfect, I can promise you that the opposite is in fact true. The secret to cut through doesn't live in perfection. In fact, we find perfection just a little bit overwhelming. Rise of reality TV now. We don't want perfect. We're put off by perfect. We don't like it. We're jaded. And that's why we're moving away from brands, following brands, to following people within brands. Because brands are perfect by their very nature. We want human beings. We want real stories. We want process. We want passion. That's what we follow. That's what we engage with. So step away from your perfect, because it could be the very thing that's preventing you from getting the attention or the cut through that you're looking for. I was actually speaking to a property development company recently, and they were sending all these perfect email campaigns out about the big kind of developments that they were putting together, big housing developments, beautiful photos, highly curated, looking gorgeous, models just sitting around in the houses, doing what people do in houses, I don't know, reading books. I can't remember the last time I read a book. And they were getting nowhere. They were getting just zero cut through with this stuff. And we were talking, and some of the ideas that came out of the room was, what if if I've shown an interest in this project, if I've shown an interest in this housing, how are you keeping me updated if I've already shown an interest? Are you sending me, like the chief engineer, just a 2-3 minute video from the chief engineer going, you are never going to guess what we've just installed in these houses. I'm just crazy excited. We've installed this sound system, this Bose sound system, that would literally make your head explode if you turned it on. And I'm going to play you a tune out of it. I'm just, so excited about some of the stuff that we're doing here. If you're into sound, if you're into tech, honestly, come check this place out. That's going to get more cut through and engagement than a beautiful photo of somebody lazing on a chaise lounge. So how are you using non-perfect storytelling? Now, just as a key, the sound does have to be good. The studies show that the sound has to be good because we don't really mind if the visuals aren't great, if it's a bit shaky or we can see your arm holding it, we don't mind. But if the sound's not good, we disengage. The other thing that is really important is use subtitles, because the majority of video gets watched while commuting or in a public space. So if you don't have subtitles, I can't engage. Whereas if you do, I watch most videos with subtitles because I don't like things blasting at me out of my phone. I usually have it on silent, but I'll read subtitles. So make the most of your efforts and make sure you have subtitles. Ben, one of his quotes, bar raising the type of stories we can get at any moment of every day, brands have to tell a better story. He calls it the Netflix effect, which I love. And the Netflix effect actually is so counterintuitive. One of the things we keep getting told over and over again, it was in the video at the beginning, that human attention spans are diminishing, that we have less and less time to get people's attention. The truth is that we have less and less time at the beginnings. One of the ways that Netflix is rewiring our brains is we expect an ad, like a super powerful ad, that gets us in with incredible storytelling and that uses human beings and narrative and everything. It's really fast and really compelling. And if you get me in, I will give you unlimited amounts of my attention. Who's binge watched anything recently? Yeah, Game of Thrones, me, like Vikings. If you get me in, I will give you unlimited amounts of my attention span. And that is something that they're really noticing at Google. That we don't have limited attention spans. You just have to get us in. So what makes an epic story? What makes an epic story, I believe, is probably 3 core factors. The first one is it personal? Are you talking to me? Have you done this before? Or have you held the hand of someone else who has done this? Do I believe you is probably the subtext to that. Do I believe you? Are you credible enough to tell this story? Second one is it relevant? What has it got to do with me? What can I do with this? This is the keep it or share it rule. So many times I'll get an email that'll be like, it's our 10-year anniversary. And you're like, delete. Why would I care about that? Is it about them? Is it something useful for them? Is it the keep it or share it for them? Is it relevant? And the third one is it a motive? Now, I don't want this one to get confused because I feel one of the dangers of a new world of influence is that we have the potential to move further and further into a drama, outrage, and fear-based society. Clickbait, algorithms, it's a whole other talk, whole other conversation. And when I put a motive down there, I don't mean dramatic language, outrage language that's going to pull somebody in. I'm not talking about clickbait. I'm talking about understanding the language of your target market. Every target market has what we would call charismatic language. The charismatic language of a target market is literally the words that they would use when you're not around. It's the words they use to describe your products and their situation when they're talking amongst themselves. We all have charismatic language. Every target market does, and it's your job to get fluent in the charismatic language of your target market. Now, what we tend to do, especially if we're nervous or scared, is we get stuck behind technical language, we get stuck behind expertise, stats, et cetera, et cetera. What we need to do is step out from behind our language and step into the language of somebody else. So that's what makes an epic story. So now I want to talk about when the rubber hits the road. We've talked about the what needs to happen. Now let's just bring it all together and talk about The how, what does it look like when you put all of those kind of different elements together? Consistency. It now takes 10 touch points. 10 touch points to convert interest to a sale, initial contact into a sale. It used to be 6 back in 2015, and now it's 10. And there's a lot of theories as to why that's changed. Some people would say the economy. Some people would say laws, government, regulation, especially in industries like financial advice. And I don't know about you, but last time I checked, I can't do anything about the economy or regulation. So it's really not worth the time focusing on it. What we need to focus on are things we can control. And what I think has more to do with this is the digital world. We are now able to research at 11 p.m. at night on our iPhones, do all of our research, make an initial contact, and then follow, stalk for a lot longer, and then come back in and make a purchase. And so we are just jumping into the journey much sooner than we ever have. It's not that we're not wanting to buy, it's just that you need to hold our hand for much longer than you've ever needed to hold our hand. We need to, anyone here dating? Probably no one here prefers to admit they're dating. Last time I dated, you don't, if someone proposed on the first date, would that just be a bit weird? Yeah, we want you to hold our hand through a journey. We want you to contribute in the long term. And that's what 10 touch points is. It's literally a touch. It's a contribution. It's reaching out. It can be an email, a phone call, whatever format. It doesn't have to be social media. And it's the key to being a trusted authority for winning influence and trust in the long term. Staying in the journey, I mean, you can take 10 out of it. Just staying in the journey for the long term. Playing the long game. Contributing in the long game. So let's talk about how we do this. Now, I wouldn't usually go into this much depth, but we're here to execute, and so I really wanted to put this in because this is a blueprint that I have found to be really useful. And some of you B2B, some of you are B2C, take what's useful and apply it. It might not all be relevant for you. First thing, you need to understand your target market. Now, that's not news. You need to know exactly who you're talking to and what their drivers are. Most target markets, if you break it down, will probably have a few key drivers. So this is one that was done for a financial advice conference. A few key drivers and some core questions. Now, you might have one target market. You might have 5 target markets. I know that certainly for B2C, sometimes there's between 3 and 5 target markets, or avatars, as they call them. What I want you to do right now is I want you to, again, you can set up, you can run on the walls, I don't mind. I want you to pick one of your target markets. 3 to 4 key drivers. What are their key drivers? What motivates their decision to get in touch with you and take action? And then what are their core kind of 3 to 4 questions that you feel like they ask the most frequently? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to work on one target market, just one, core drivers and core questions. We can pump up some volume. Oh my God, I sound like a DJ. Pump up some volume. I was just having a discussion that the more specific you can be with this stuff, the better. I've been in offices where people have their, again, the more technical term, avatars, basically just target markets, have their avatars up on the wall, and they give them names. And they sit there and they would say, who are we talking to right now? We're talking to Stephen. Okay, if we're talking to Stephen, what does Stephen like? What's Stephen into? What kind of language would Stephen use? The more specific you can be, the more you can humanize this, the more you can talk directly to them. Give them a name. Pop them up on your wall. The more you get to know about Stephen, or whatever you call them, the better able you are to tailor your communication to actually make an impact. So what's the next part? There are 3 parts when it comes to influence design. The second part is that every target market asks different questions. But here's where it gets interesting. Every target market also asks different questions at different stages of their journey. So I'll give you a bit of an example about this. Recently I was trying to book a holiday. So I wanted to go somewhere cold for Christmas. I wanted to meet my family. My children had never seen snow, and I wanted to introduce them to snow and watch them play with it and then get sick of it and want to go indoors. And I was starting to just research places. And I had been to Montepulciano in Italy. Anyone been there? Beautiful. I'd been there for my honeymoon, and I was like, well, why don't we go there? And so I was just doing my 11 p.m. Google, which is what I do, and I'm Googling, and I came across this blog from this couple, 2 guys, and they had bought this kind of busted up building in Montepulciano, and they were writing a blog about the fact that they were renovating it and what they were going to do, and it was going to be an Airbnb, and it was going to open in 18 months' time. And I started following their journey. And because they were contributing constantly, they were, every single blog, it was like, here, we've put a list together of the top 5 places to go for hot chocolate in Montepulciano. Here are the festivals, and here's when they happen. Here's some photos of our new chalet and what it's going to look like. My mum visited recently and saw the renovations. Here's what she thought of going into town and different cafes to go to. If you're her generation and you wanted to come and visit. And on and on and on this kind of contribution went during the investigate phase. And I was just stalking. I'm just stalking them. And then eventually I reached out. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about bringing my family for Christmas next year when you open. Do you have any availability? What would that involve? And they said, we're really sorry, we're booked up. We're already booked up. 12 months ahead. And I was like, bugger. And they were like, but get back in touch for the next Christmas, and we'll see if we can see what we can do. And I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure what we'll be doing, but I'll think about it. And so I'm asking different questions at this stage. I already know that I want to go, but now I'm kind of thinking, maybe I should go somewhere else for my holiday. How would I even get there anyway? I don't know, flight prices. And I get an email from them. And it says, hi, I know you got in touch about coming. Now is a really good time to book your airfares if you're going to, because this is the cheapest time of year to book. Not only that, but we have a travel agent that we work with that is so experienced in getting great airfares for families. Would you like us to put you in touch? I was like, okay, that would be amazing. I'll just get some prices. And so I got some prices, and then they got back in touch. And they said, we've actually just finished a new chalet, which could be perfect for you as a family. Do you want us to send you some photos? And on and on. And what they knew is that I was asking different questions at different stages of my journey. And they got fluent in the questions I was probably asking, and they answered them before I even knew that I had them. And that's when you know you've nailed this. When you answer a question before anyone even knows they've got the question. So understanding the questions of your target market, and then breaking that down into what questions do they ask at what stage in their journey. The third part, there they are. There they are. It's called, what's it called? Forte Martina? Anybody that's interested, I can send it to you. The next bit, the third bit, the final bit of influence design when we're talking from a marketing standpoint is content. And there are 4 different content drivers. Firstly is branded communication. What lies behind branded communication is trust, credibility, efficiency, infrastructure. Can you do what you say you're going to do in the way that you say you're going to do it? How long have you been doing this for? How often have you done this? So that's the first content driver. The second content driver is product or service. And that one's excitement. What is it that I'm going to get? Get me excited about it. Tell me some exciting stories about it. What kind of service, what kind of products have you got? Third one is journey, and this one gets missed a lot. What do you know about my journey? Again, where am I in my journey, and what questions might I be asking at this stage? And then preempting those questions for me with contribution. And then finally, incentive, urgency. Now, it doesn't have to be incentive. If you're in a business that works with incentives, great. It could just simply be urgency. What can you put in there that's going to make me make a decision now as opposed to 3 months from now? This year as opposed to next year? What can you do in your communication that's just going to tip me over the edge into action? It could be a financial incentive. It could be a value-based, value bundling incentive. It could be anything. So how do we put it all together? What does it look like when we put it all together? It looks a bit like this. This is basically a content map that is designed for influence. And all it is, if you've got 3 target markets, what questions will your target market be asking about the brand in the early stages of their journey around trust? What questions will they be asking about the product? What questions will they be asking about where they're at in their journey during that phase? And what incentive or urgency might work for them? and then again during the consideration phase, and then again during the decision phase. Now, if you can get 3 questions into each of these boxes, which I'm not going to ask you to do today, but if you can, that's 36 pieces of content. 36 pieces of content, 36 ways of structuring a sales call. Now, if you then took each of those questions and you did what we would call cornerstone content, which is where, let's just say, for each of those questions, you did a podcast or you did a video, and then you cut that video up into smaller 1-minute pieces, and then you had that video transcribed into an article or a blog post, and then you pulled some quotes out, and on and on and on it goes. So if for every single one of those 36 questions you can get 3 or 4 pieces of content, that's a pretty good start. Now, this is the minimum, I believe, this is the minimum that you should know about your target markets. This becomes the basis of a content plan, this becomes the basis of your sales training, this becomes the basis of your sales calls. This becomes the basis of your internal discussions. All right, Stephen, where's Stephen at right now? He's in the consideration phase. What does he need to know about brand? What does he need to know about the product? Where is he in his journey, and what urgency might work for him? This is the minimum you need to know. So what I want you to do, and again, actually, by the way, I don't care where you put this. This is another question that comes up. I don't care if you have a multi-million-dollar sales force, and I've been down that road. Like, I don't care if you're building in Salesforce, or if you have a scrappy Excel spreadsheet. I don't mind where it lives. What I care about is that you have it. Somewhere to put it, and you're putting it in. Because you can have the most expensive CRM in the world if no one's putting any information in it, which we've all been down that road. It doesn't matter. So I don't care where you put it. What I care is that you put it somewhere, that you can access it. Value in, value out. So what could it look like? It could look like that. So I'm going to give you, what time have we got left? Yeah, we've got enough. I'm going to give you just over, probably just under 10 minutes. This is the longest period of time I'm going to give you. I want you to see if you can fill out as much as possible in this for one target market. Do it with Postit Notes, do it on the wall. I don't mind where you do it. Sit on the floor. I'll come sit with you. I'm going to give you under 10 minutes. I want you to see if you can now execute as much of this as you can. If we can pump up some music, thank you. Admin for tradies, how's that for an influence intersection? And she started to try and understand more about the questions that were being asked. And so she actually reached out to the tradies' wives, because the tradies, I'm guessing, are just too busy to get hold of. And she reached out to their wives and she said, what are some of the questions you have? What are some of the pain points you have? What opportunities do you have? And they came back to her and they said, our biggest issue that we have is how can we take a holiday? How do we get to take a holiday? Because they're constantly on. And she was like, okay, well, how about if as a product, we developed holiday relief, actually as a package that you could purchase? And how well has that gone well? People are taking you up on it. Only just launched it. Well, let me know. Because it's just such a brilliant idea. You understand these questions, you can start designing journeys and products around them. So let's just keep moving. Probably the biggest piece of pushback on all of this is that looks like a lot of work, right? Looks like a lot of work. And the good news is that one of the best ways that you can do this, and also one of the most impactful ways that you can do this, is to not do it yourself. Is to co-create and collaborate. Now, there are some incredible examples out there at the moment of industries that are using co-creation, collaboration, what they call non-competing independents, basically people who are able to serve your target market but are not competing with you, to create some amazing campaigns that are getting cut through. And actually, again, go back to product design, to create products together. I came across a retirement planning firm in the States that specializes in aviation, in pilots. And they said, for retirement for pilots, they've got a lot of questions. Some of it's retirement planning, some of it's insurance, some of it's tax, some of it's, actual tech software of how they keep a track of all this stuff. And so they put this product together that was an entire planning solution for pilots. And they pulled in other collaborators to offer and deliver parts of that product. So you can pull in collaborators to help you with products, to help you with content, because again, if I have a question, if you've written down all the questions of your target market, if I have a question that isn't related to you, but is, we were talking about weddings the other day, it might be about wedding dresses. I might have a question about wedding dresses. You're not a wedding dress expert. So you might be able to pull in somebody else. If that's one of the questions, you might go out to your network and say, all right, who do I know that is a wedding dress expert? This person over here, they're amazing. Hey, one of our questions for our target market is this. Can you help us answer that? Would you mind putting together a video or a how-to guide or something to help us answer that question? They do it. They give it to you. You get to send it out, so you get to contribute. You get the hero status from it. But then what do they do? What does the person who created it do? Share it. They just put all that effort into building it. They're going to share it. And you chose them specifically because they also have the eyes and ears of your target market, but they're not competing with you. And so now you have access to their network, as well as your own, plus the fact that you didn't actually have to create the piece of content yourself. Now, when we talk about trust and being a trusted authority, being a trusted advisor, one of the key elements of trust is that you become my go-to. I know that I can call you and you're going to just point me in the right direction. It might not be in your expertise. Quick story for you. When I was pregnant with my daughter and I was going to the nurses at my local hospital, and I used to go to the nurses with a list, it's a bit anal, with a list of questions that I wanted to get answered. And they would look at those questions and they'd be like, okay, that one's slightly irrelevant, but all right. And they would look at them all and they would say, okay, these are really interesting questions and we're gonna take a note of those. But here are some questions that you're not asking right now that you should be. Now, how much do you trust somebody if they preempt questions that you haven't thought of yet that are gonna be important to you? Here are the questions you're not asking that you should be. Question number 1, who's gonna take care of you? You have no family in Australia. Your husband owns his own business. He's not gonna be able to take any time off. Who's gonna have your back? And I was like, I don't know. Like, okay, here's the number of a community nurse. She's amazing. I spent a lot of time with her. Call her up, make an appointment. What are you going to do about breastfeeding? There's all this talk here about actually having the baby. That's just going to happen. What are you going to do afterwards? Not everybody finds breastfeeding easy. And I was like, don't you just go to a cafe, order a latte, and just... Because that's what Instagram says happens. And they were like, no, not everybody finds it that easy. Here's the number of a lactation consultant. She has a program. Get on the program now, because the more information you can get early, the faster they're going to latch and the easier you're going to find it. Actually, I did this presentation with a room full of real estate agents, and it was hilarious because I said the words lactation consultant and the whole room just went, huh? And there was this one guy in the middle that was like, Gotcha, sister. I know. And then the third one, what are you going to do with all of that? How are you going to put all of that back together? And I was like, I've got no idea. I said, okay, here's a physio. He has a program specifically for new mothers. He's in your local area. Call him. They became the students of my world. And because of that, I would have always gone to them, trusting that they can point me in other great directions. Now, from a trust point of view, preempting my questions and having a network of experts around you that you can point people in the direction of, that's huge. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Those particular brand of nurses, they then created their own brand of nappies. So which nappies did I buy? They had earned the right. They had been the primary, again, translators. They had been the primary translators of my world. They had earned the right to sell me anything. Now, what if that particular company had then started their own physio department? Where would I have gone? Yeah. Their own lactation consulting service, where would I have gone? So while you're paying attention to questions, and you're pointing people in directions of people that can help them in your trusted network, and you're earning that trust, quite rightly so, you're also paying attention to what opportunities that there are. Do you know what? Everybody is asking this question. I've just pushed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business in this direction. Could we do that? And that's when you start to diversify. Yes. How would you articulate it online?
Online, yeah, on an online business. Would you do it as like a blog post? You know, how would you
How would you answer the questions, or how would you get the questions?
How would you answer the questions? How would you send that out to your target audience?
I would do, again, videos, blog posts, how-to guides, mini courses, ebooks. There are plenty of platforms, and I'm not a social media expert. There are plenty of platforms to make impact, from publishing, speaking, social media, content. I'm more about the human drivers that sit over the technology platforms. However, online now, the things that can be done with lead funnels, things that can be done with data and CRMs and automation makes it one of the smartest places to contribute, because it is utterly, utterly leverageable. So I think that's probably the best place for a contribution-based business. You're welcome. So we've talked about collaboration and co-creation. Who can you co-create with? Well, you can co-create, as I've said, with your network. You can also co-create with the people within your teams. We talked about how the combined network of a team, of the people within your walls of your organization, is 600 times larger than the network of the brand itself, of the company itself. And yet only 2% of anyone that works within an organization shares anything about that organization at all. Only 2% of people share anything about their company. Any of the content the company creates, any of the great things that are happening. Now, there's some reasons for that. They might not like where they work, that's one thing. They might not be proud of what they do, that's another thing. But one of the reasons I think that is more easily accessible, that we can do more things about, is that we're not co-creating. They haven't been part of that conversation. What's being produced doesn't feel like it fits with them, wouldn't fit with their networks. So having the discussion about what can we build together, how can you contribute to our goals? Could you do a video if you want to? Could you write a blog post? How can you bring people in on the journey, just like Macy's? I'll share a quick story with you, because I think that this can sometimes run the danger of thinking it's just B2C, and it's not. Companies like Macy's are, taking B2C and running with it. But IBM did something really interesting. So during the global financial crisis, IBM suddenly realized that they were struggling. Their customers were asking some really, really big questions, and they didn't have the answers. They were losing business left, right, and center. Nobody was spending. And they were thinking about doing what they had always done, which is just upping their advertising spend, just spending more money, out-shouting, out-interrupting everybody. And they changed their mind, luckily, at the last minute, and they created a campaign called Smarter Planet. And the Smarter Planet campaign was so interesting. What they did is they went inside the walls of their organization. They figured out the questions that their clients were asking. What's my industry going to look like 10 years from now? What kind of products are going to resonate? How could technology be used to transform this space? And they went inside their organization, and they went to their master inventors and their chief engineers. And they said, can you answer some of these questions? And then they bought pages, full pages, in the New York Times, Washington Post, just pure contribution. Here are some ideas we have about how things can be done. Here are some ideas we have about how technology can be used to reinvent this particular space. Here are some ideas we have about the conversations that are happening at the moment. So they did it internally, and then they started to go to their clients and say, look, we've got all these questions, we don't know how to answer them. You seem to have answered them really well. Can we share some case studies? And they started co-creating with their clients. Now, that particular campaign has been directly attributed to the fact that IBM's share price that year went up by 64%. Now, bear in mind, it started pretty low because it was the GFC. But everybody else has only increased by 14 in the same space, on average 14%. So that is an awful lot of revenue off co-creation, off a co-creation contribution strategy. So who can you, and this is one of the last things we're going to do together today, who can you co-create with? So non-competing independents, who has the eyes and ears of your customers but not competing with you, your team, who are passionate individuals within your organization that have the eyes and the ears of the people you want to talk to, that you can tap into. And then customers. How can you collaborate with customers? So I'm going to give you, we don't have long, I'm probably going to give you 2 minutes, it's a quick one. Who can you collaborate with? Who can you be co-creating with? Whose networks do you want access to? Who can help answer the questions that your customers have? 2 minutes, very quickly. I want to leave you with this word, certainty. If I look at any of the brilliant ideas or the brilliant people or the brilliant brands that I have seen that haven't made it, that have fallen by the wayside, there's usually something in there around this word confidence. And the problem with the word confidence, and we all use it a lot, is that it's a complete myth. The idea that confidence is going to show up, that you're going to have the confidence to try something new, you're going to have the confidence to jump in and do it differently, you're going to have the confidence to disrupt a conversation, is a complete myth, because confidence shows up when we show up over and over again. It's not the ingredient, it's the result. It's the result of showing up. You know, my daughter, she's learning how to do the monkey bars at the moment. And super cute, and I'm with her, and she's kind of like on the monkey bars, falling off flat on her face, get back up, falling off flat on her face. And I'm like, honey, are you feeling more confident with those now? She's like, no. And just keeps going. Because somehow as children, we know something that we forget when we grow up, when we become grown-ups. And that is that confidence only shows up when we show up. You earn confidence. You don't start with confidence, you earn it. And by the time it arrives, it's pretty much useless because you're already up there doing it. You've already earned it. It's no longer required. And so if there's any part of you and anything that we've talked about today that is thinking, oh, I'll do that when I feel a little bit more confident, when it's a bit more perfect, when I understand a little bit more about the platforms, when when the marketplace changes a bit, when I have a little bit more money in my budget, when I blah, 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 versions of perfection. If any part of you is doing that, stop. I want you to focus on moving with certainty. Because moving and communicating with certainty is something that we can do right now. And all that certainty looks like is this. Certainty is a downward sensation in your body. It's gravity. It's gravitas. Confidence is an upward sensation. It's more adrenaline-based. I want you to focus on what can I contribute today, given the best that I have, given all of my experiences, given everything that I know. What's the best that I can contribute today? I give you everything I have. And tomorrow, if I learn something new, or I fall on my face, or something better comes up, then I'll change my mind, I'll pivot, I'll keep moving. But today, I give you the best that I've got. I will move with certainty. And so, I want you to forget the word confidence, just knock it to the curb. I want you to focus on moving and communicating with certainty instead, because you can do that right now. That's not a waiting game. Someone who's inspiring me a lot at the moment, Greta Thunberg, you all know, Greta Thunberg. This is a photo. It's not the best photo. It's not that high res. I can't find a high res version of her sat outside Parliament. She'd asked for a day off school, and she sat outside Parliament to protest about climate change. 12 months on from that photo being taken, millions of people, grown-ups, took to the streets around the world to protest as part of a movement that she created. She spoke at the UN. She's in dialogue with politicians. And all of that, for me, from where I sit, seems to be rooted in the fact that she has remembered something that most of us have forgotten. And that is that influence doesn't live, out there in algorithms, in how much money you have in your marketing budget, in how big or how small you are, how old or how young you are, the loudness of your voice or your confidence just comes from committing to move with certainty. The next thing. What is the next thing I can do? And then executing it with certainty for the best that you have on that day. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want to invite you to go out there and just nail it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much to Julie. That was absolutely incredible. I've got so many notes and Post-its, which I'm so excited about. So some of my key takeaways were out-contribute everybody else, and that has really stuck with me. I've listened to Julie several times on podcasts and so on, and out-contribute everyone in your space really sticks with me. The other ones was keeping a list of questions. I love that, keeping a note of the questions that I get asked. The radar activity once a week, I love, and sending someone something of value that I just thought of you. I do that, but I do it quite ad hoc. So doing it once a week, I think, is something that actually it's more purposeful. Keep it or share it. How much did everyone love that one? Like the content has to be so good that someone wants to keep it somewhere safe, or they want to share it with someone. And then the final one for me was be the translator. I loved that. I really, really, really loved that. So thank you to Julie. We've got some flowers for you as a little bit of a thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
So before you shoot off to lunch, 2 things. One, housekeeping. I'm going to clear the walls so that we can do the next activities this afternoon. If you want to take a photo of your lovely pieces of artwork, please do before I rub it off. The next one, I'm going to take a risk and use technology and people getting out their phones and try and keep your attention. So, yeah, good luck with that. So Julie talked about collaborating and who can you collaborate with. One thing that was interesting for me when I looked at the registration list was I was like, ooh, I want to connect Jodie to Helen and I want to connect Helen to so-and-so, and I really just saw the value in the connections. Now, I know with the best will in the world, we can't get around everyone in lunch. So the activity that I want us to do is get out your phones, and if you have the LinkedIn app, you're in luck. If you don't, you're going to have to download it over lunch. And when you get out the app, go to My Network at the bottom. This is where I hope to God this works. And then we're going to add. And what you can do is find people near me. And it's find near me. So you can connect with everyone in the room. But as Julie said, there's no point us connecting with lots and lots of people without then taking that to a meaningful conversation, a collaboration, a way to co-create. So that's my little execution challenge to you, is find who else in the room that you can partner with. Everyone got it?
Does it work?
So with that, I'm going to let you go to lunch and get connecting.